You're listening to the Being Stellar podcast, the podcast for modern leaders and entrepreneurs who are tired of hustle culture and ready to invite more ease and more prosperity into their lives. I'm your host, Deborah Stellingwerff, master teacher and coach, and I am obsessed with helping you avoid burnout while you create a sustainable lifestyle full of possibility and profit on your terms. On the show, you'll hear inspiring stories of possibility, and you'll get empowering strategies and insights from me to support you in creating your stellar life. Well, hello there, stellar friends, and welcome back to the Being Stellar podcast. Today, I want to talk about the distinction between motivation and inspiration. Often people come to me when they are at a stage in their business. They might be feeling a little bit burnt out. They're wondering if there's a better way to do things. And trust me, there is. There's the aligner. There's the hustle for approval and work really hard and be busy all the time method of stress and struggle. Or there's the more easeful way of the align and prosperous way. But often when they come to me, they say they're struggling to be motivated. And that, they have this idea of what they want their business to look like, but they just can't find the motivation. And I even had two of my own clients say that to me recently. I'm struggling to find motivation. And, I always want to check in when you're struggling to find motivation, what is happening here? Because it could be that you're physically fatigued. You might just be tired from working so hard. Or there might be something else going on that your body, your spirit is telling you something's not aligned here. Something's not quite right. We haven't quite got ourselves aligned with our higher purpose. And so I want to think about that idea of motivation as being, it's fine to be motivated, I guess, but I'm not a fan of motivation. I'd actually rather you seek to be inspired rather than try to find motivation. And the reason is this: I make the distinction between motivation and inspiration as one is external, motivation is external, and inspiration is internal. And whenever we have an internal inspiration or internal locus of control, we're actually more likely to take the action required to get the result we want. So some people may feel differently, but let me explain why this is a distinction for me. So the idea of being motivated is, to me, as I said, very external. And sometimes it comes from what are other people going to think? Or I need to get this done by a deadline because I promised it and I will look stupid if I don't do it. Or, I need to get this done to get paid, or whatever that external pressure is of, doing things, which actually causes a lot of stress, right? And I've talked about that in a previous episode about procrastination, actually. The reason why we sometimes struggle with this feeling of procrastination is because sometimes we're waiting for that sense of urgency so we can get that wash of hormones, stress hormones that get us motivated, right? So it's external. We're addicted to those stress hormones that motivate us and move us. To motivate literally means the root of the word motivate, motivare, is to move. And we want it to move us, right? Rather than taking it pushes us. Motivation pushes us. So when we wait until we get the stress hormone release of anxiety or urgency, then we'll be motivated. And we're looking for that motivation all the time. And I want to say, let's stop looking for motivation and instead plug in to inspiration. Why do you want to do the thing you're doing? What result is it getting for you? What matters to you about this thing that you're doing? So rather than feeling like I have to wait until I'm moved by either some external pressure of someone else expecting something from me, or by the self-imposed kind of pressure of the stress hormone, because we wait for that urgency for the stress to wash through us, then instead let's focus on taking inspired action. You've heard this phrase before, I'm sure of it. If you've been in the personal growth world at all, we talk about inspired action, and that's what I'm talking about here. So rather than waiting to be motivated, I don't wait to be motivated. I get up every morning and I take inspired action. And how I do that is that I plug in literally, well, not literally, I guess. I plug in metaphorically during my meditation to my why, to what I want to create and who I want to be in the world and the impact that I want to make. And by doing that, by tapping into the inspiration of why I'm doing what I'm doing, I actually don't need motivation. I don't need external pressure and deadlines to do something. And I don't need the cortisol rush that I used to be addicted to, right? That rush of I think it's cortisol actually. In this very moment, I'm wondering if it's cortisol is the right hormone, but whatever it is, I think it's cortisol. And that rush of adrenaline and cortisol and the hormone releases that you would get if you were running away from a predator, right? That's the same kind of rush we get when we feel the urgency to get something done. And so when we're no longer addicted or requiring that kind of rush or urgency, it's such a relief. What I talk about in my programs, the Aligned and Prosperous program, and pretty much everywhere, is that you can do your business and your life with more ease and grace. We live in a hustle culture. This podcast started because I was really determined. And everything I do actually is about helping people to opt out of hustle culture and that striving and struggling and proving, and opt into more ease, more spaciousness, more wealth, and more prosperity. And we do that by really coming into alignment with our why, with our inspiration for why we're doing something. And so when you can tap into that inspiration, for me, it's that I want to serve 1,000 people and help them to create aligned and prosperous lives. I do that in a number of different ways. I do it with my one-on-one private coaching. I do it with my group mastermind coaching. I do it with my Aligned and Prosperous Academy. I do it with this podcast, with free trainings I do, with talks that I do, and I'm gathering those people. And I'm probably going to have to change that number soon because I'm just realizing that I actually probably have more than 1,000 people already in my community. So maybe, you're witnessing it live right here, right now. We're changing that number. Maybe we're going to change that number to 10,000. That feels really, really scary to me. I'm going to sit with that for a little while. Because so sometimes what we do is we play with our inspiration, go, ooh, and if we make it too big, we may not be inspired. We might be overwhelmed by it, right? And so I feel a little bit overwhelmed by 10,000. So how about we just double that maybe? And maybe we'll go with 5,000 or 2,000. I'll get back to you on what my number I settle on, but you're witnessing this live. This is how I process my inspiration. And I have really so many ways that I can reach those 1,000 people already. And so I want to keep serving and keep supporting people. So maybe I double that number, right? I want to reach 2,000 people. 2 doesn't feel like an inspiring number to me though. 1 or 5 does. Let's go with 5. Okay. And so, but you see, it's tapping into what feels inspiring versus what feels overwhelming. Because when you choose a goal that feels overwhelming, like right now, 10,000 people, feels overwhelming for me. It feels more than I can create space for. I feel like I can hold space for the people in my community right now. And I'm learning to stretch that even all the time. I'm stretching more and more. There's a time where I couldn't have held space for 1,000 people. Whereas now I feel like I can hold space for that. And the idea of 10 feels overwhelming. And then suddenly the inspiration's gone and I start looking for motivation. Right. And I start, even in my body right now, as I'm saying this, I start feeling that fear of like, oh, I got to find something that's going to like motivate me to go for 10,000. And I'm like, I'm just not there right now. And that's really okay. So I'm checking in with what feels like it's aligned for me. And there's alignment for me to say, yep, we can probably look to double that now and aim for, here it is. The number's 2,500. That makes sense to me. Okay. So from 1,000 to 2,500. And it's like moving that energy of what inspires me and kind of playing with it a little bit and looking for the inspiration. And I can tell the difference between inspiration and motivation because inspiration comes from inside of me. It's that little spark, little golden bubbles of light and joy that come right from like my heart center. If you're watching the video, if you're listening to this and not watching the video, you'll see me, I'm like pointing to my heart space, right? There's like this heart space opening and spaciousness. It feels like joy and lightness when it's inspiration. When I seek for motivation is when I've picked a goal that's maybe too big and it doesn't quite inspire me, it actually overwhelms me, then I need motivation from the outside. I need somebody to push me. I need something to push me. It feels very external. So this is why I'm always saying to my clients when they show up, or even people who are prospective clients show up, and I'm saying it to you now, stop looking for motivation, because motivation is outside of you. It will always feel heavy. It will always feel like struggling, striving, hustling for approval, whereas inspiration can and should feel light and spacious and expansive. Like there's so much opportunity when we're coming from inspiration. It will move you towards the outcome that you desire, with much more ease and spaciousness. So the trick is finding what is that thing that inspires you. And I've modeled for you right here how to play with it, how to say, well, what's that thing that I want? And do I want it this much or do I want it this much? Right? I gave the example of serving 1,000 versus 10,000 people, but it might be something different for you. It might be earning a certain amount of money. It might be helping a certain number of families, either with their investments or with their real estate transactions. You decide what that's going to look like for you. Maybe it's growing a team. So when you can really drill down on what it is that inspires you, then you'll be able to move more towards that goal and stop looking for motivation. So the other day, I'm going to give you one last example and then we'll wrap this up. I was speaking with someone, and this actually, I've had this conversation several times with clients in the last little while, but I had specifically a new client come in and so she was really struggling to be motivated. I said, well, let's stop doing that then. And let's find the inspiration instead. And she had a really specific number goal that she wanted to make $1 million for her retirement savings. And she has a time frame that she wants to do it in. And she was just feeling very much like, well, I just need to make this, I have to make this money. It's my retirement fund. And I'm just like, okay, well, why aren't you doing it? She's like, I don't know. I can't get myself motivated. So we did some coaching around that and discovered that in drilling down to why this was important to her to have $1 million in a retirement fund for when she and her husband retire, then we drilled that down and said, well, what kind of life do you want to live and how's that going to feel? And what she came up with is like, that was going to feel, she had a lot of details about what she wanted to do in her life that I'm not going to share because they're hers. But the idea was more that she wanted freedom. She didn't want comfort. Oh, that was the thing. Oh yeah, I remember now. She said, I want to be comfortable in retirement. I'm like, geez, that doesn't sound very inspiring, right? Because the thing is that if you're wanting to be comfortable, it's not very inspiring and you will not do what it takes to get uncomfortable. Like you're going to have to get uncomfortable to create the different future. But if comfort is your goal, you're already probably comfortable. And you're probably already in your comfort zone. So it's not going to inspire you. So we played with envisioning her future and we redesigned how we were going to frame that with words. And it was really a really simple shift from a comfortable retirement to, being comfortable in retirement to having freedom. And we started calling this $1 million retirement savings her $1 million freedom fund. And she just sat right up and got really sparked and jazzed about that because having a freedom fund was way more exciting to her than having a comfort fund. And it was just a mindset shift, but that's often all we need. And that's what inspiration is a mindset shift. Okay, so just to sum it all up, let's stop looking for motivation. Let's start leaning into inspiration. And if you need some support determining exactly what that inspiration is, I'm actually happy to be pretty good at helping people pull that out and reframe it so that they can stop relying on motivation, external factors that feel kind of heavy and like really struggling, to tapping into your why, tapping into your inspiration and really lighting a fire for it. So if that's something you'd like help with, let's talk about which track might be best for you. My private one-on-one coaching, my mastermind groups, or the Aligned and Prosperous Academy. So either way, you will find your aligned and prosperous way on any of those paths. Make a wonderful day, and I will see you again very soon. Bye for now.